So tonight, let's welcome the leader of Plaid Cymru, the party of Wales, Leanne Wood's here. Hello, Leanne.
Hello.
Croeso I Radio 1 Live Lounge.
Diolch yn fawr, thank you. Dwi'n iawn, diolch yn fawr.
Good. That's it. I learned that especially for you.
Well done. Very good.
So this lot have got their questions, and we've had quite a few coming in on Twitter and on Facebook for you as the day goes on as well. And you've got a few minutes to get them in as well if you tweet using the hashtag LiveLoungeWood. We've got several questions for you, Leanne. Let's start front and centre. A question from the front row.
Hi Leanne, I'm Darren, I'm from Newcastle. I wanted to ask, if you were part of the government, would you further the UK as a whole, or just seek to further your agenda for Welsh independence?
Well, Plaid Cymru is my party, it's the party of Wales, and clearly my country is very important to me. But the manifesto that we're putting forward in this election, there are clear gains to be made for Wales, but there are benefits that would be available to all communities in the UK were we to hold the power in a hung parliament situation. So, for example, one of the things we want to do is to raise the minimum wage up to the living wage, and that would be something that would benefit people in all parts of the UK. We want to end 0 hours contracts. We want to end austerity. Now, this is a word that's used quite a lot in politics, and austerity means cuts to public services which impact mostly on the poorest people in society, and we believe that that situation has been very unfair, that the books have been balanced on the backs of the poor, and that situation shouldn't continue. Those with the most should contribute a lot more to closing that deficit gap.
Answer your question, Darren?
Yeah, I think as a young person we're all quite interested in Leanne's quite progressive policies, and we're all quite a fan of them, especially your comments to Nigel Farage. Everyone whooped, you know, we were so happy with that. But I think there is a big fear, especially amongst young people, that the amount of public debt, if you just get rid of austerity and start spending, you know, if you were in a government with Nicola Sturgeon, who also wants to end austerity, is it just going to be two parties, you know, pulling the government into even more debt than it is currently?
Well, we've put forward, both the SNP and Plaid Cymru have put forward proposals for modest increases in spending.
Is 180 billion modest? That's just Scotland alone.
Well, the point is that if you invest in job creation, you get more people in work in decent paid jobs, and that would bring more money into the tax pot. So we're not saying that the deficit shouldn't be reduced, but it should be done in a way that takes care of people and makes sure that people have work.
So you wouldn't have a date for eliminating the deficit?
We wouldn't have a date, no. That's the bit, I think, that the artificial deadline is the bit that's a problem for me, because if you just focus on balancing the books and you disregard everything else, then what we see is those with the least suffering the most, and that's something that we want to bring an end to.
If you want to influence what goes on at Westminster, Leanne, why aren't you standing for Parliament?
I am a member of the National Assembly for Wales, and I think that from Plaid Cymru's perspective, that's the institution that we need to grow and focus on. But that said, so many of the decisions affecting Wales are made in Westminster, and so it's important that Plaid Cymru politicians are there making sure that Wales has a voice when those decisions are made. But I'm perfectly happy in my role in Cardiff Bay, and I've no ambition to live in London or work as a Westminster politician.
Not just because you wouldn't win?
No, because I've got my priorities elsewhere in Wales.
All right, let's have a question again, left and front.
Hello, my name's Peter. I'm from the Plaid Cymru constituency of Carmarthenshire East and Dynevor. I'm a massive Plaid voter, so you don't need to worry about my vote. But for the general young people out there, what really grinds my gears is, why hasn't Plaid Cymru in Wales been having as much success as the SNP in Scotland?
Well, watch this space, Peter, is what I'd say to you, because the SNP have had amazing success in Scotland, but their success started back in 2007 when they first formed a minority government. They went on then, having proven to people that they could be trusted to run the government, to become a majority government in 2011, and then, of course, they went on to hold the referendum campaign, and the level of engagement among people through the process of holding that referendum campaign line has been amazing, I think. And I would like us to do the same in Wales. I would like us to have a conversation about our national future and about the kind of society that we want to live in. But I recognise as well that that's not something we could do tomorrow. There are weaknesses in our economy, which is why the economic question is the question at the heart of our manifesto this time. We want to do everything we can to create the conditions to strengthen the Welsh economy so that we can get to that point where they got to in Scotland and have that debate and referendum and people can have a say about where we want to go as a country.
Do you think you'll see an independent Wales in your lifetime?
I do, and I think that given events that are happening in Scotland and elsewhere, that is the general direction of things. But there's nothing inevitable about that. We have to choose for that to happen.
So is there evidence that support for an independent Wales is rising?
The evidence shows that the numbers of people who want more powers for Wales is on the increase.
That's a bit different to an independent Wales, though, isn't it?
Yes, you're right. So the opinion polls at the moment show that there isn't a majority support for an independent Wales. But you have to remember as well, when the SNP started on the process of their referendum, there was much less support for a yes vote when they started the process than the 45% that they obtained at the end of the process. So the referendum campaign and the debate itself tends to generate additional support for a yes position.
OK, let's have a question from Twitter. Lewis tweeted, should the circumstance arise, is there any party you would outright not enter a coalition agreement with? Or maybe a coalition agreement you might have to support a party that makes a minority government. We all know there's going to be a lot of horse trading after May the 7th.
I would not support any coalition agreement with the Conservatives or UKIP. In fact, I want to work with our progressive friends in the SNP and any Greens that are elected in England in order to provide an alternative to that worst-case scenario, which is a UKIP-Tory coalition.
But SNP and Plaid and the Greens doesn't add up to many seats. It probably adds up to about 44 seats.
Well, we've said we'll work with a Labour government in order to put forward our priorities.
So you think Ed Miliband's Prime Minister material?
I don't think it's about personalities. I think it's about policies and politics. And there are many policies that the Labour Party are putting forward that I would have a problem with. Their commitment to continued austerity, that they've signed up to another £30 billion worth of cuts to public services, is a problem for me. The fact that they have signed up or will sign up to renewing Trident is a problem, because I just can't see how it can be justified to spend £100 billion on weapons of mass destruction that were designed for the Cold War age, when we've got so many people in need in terms of hospitals, schools, pensioners, young people and so on. So there's a much wider range of priorities for that money than more weapons of mass destruction.
All right, let's have another question here in the live lounge.
Hi Leanne, my name's Matt Smith. I run a small business in Liverpool, and inherently I have to keep a close eye on my finances of what's coming in, what's going out. Do you know how much the UK government is currently paying a week just in interest on the debt we have?
I know it's a lot. It's a phenomenal amount. You're right.
I know.
I can't give you an exact figure, no.
Okay.
But I know it's a huge amount.
Do you know, Matt? Do you want to enlighten us?
I do. It's £1 billion a week. I can try an easier one. Do you know how much debt the UK government has?
1.5 trillion is the debt. And you're right to point out to the growing cost of interest, but it's worth noting as well that interest rates are the lowest that they've been for an awful long time at the moment. So in terms of borrowing, now is a good time to borrow, but we don't want to be spending huge amounts on interest payments forever, which is why closing the deficit is something that has to be done.
Well, that's a great point, Leanne. So you've mentioned a whole host of spending priorities in your manifesto. How on earth do you intend to pay down the debt?
Well, if more people are in work and paying into the tax pot, then the gap is reduced. So in terms of the economy, the effort has to go into economic stimulation. Skills is another key question. And we want to see an increase in departmental spending by a modest 0.5%, which would in itself stimulate economic activity. So there's a number of ways that you can reduce your debt. You can use the taxation system and cut or raise taxes. You can cut public expenditure, which is what the UK coalition government have focused almost all its effort in doing up until this point. Or you can invest in job creation measures to try and bring more money into the tax pot.
Sure.
Yeah.
We saw that in France quite recently, where they tried to invest their way, essentially. They tried to spend their way out of debt. And it was just last year that Yorkshire actually created more jobs than all of France put together. Do you not think that failed model should be a sign for us to follow our austerity measures with our economy leading the G7 for growth?
Well, I wouldn't use France as a model.
Why?
But, well, because of the policies that you've outlined haven't actually been implemented in the way that they said that they would implement them when they stood for election. But there are ways of reducing the deficit without further cutting public services.
So you want to spend your way out of debt?
Or borrow your way out of debt?
Borrow, of course. We don't have the money to spend already, do we?
Well, we need to invest in job creation. Jobs won't happen on their own, and with people... We've seen unemployment has gone down, but the numbers of people who have gone into work have ended up on low-paid jobs. They've many zero-hours contracts.
I'm so glad you said that, Leanne. Of all the new jobs that have been created, 80% have been full-time and 60% have been skilled labour. So what you've just said is completely false.
Well, there are a huge number of zero-hours contracts, and
80% are full-time. So even if all of the non-full-time jobs weren't full-time, that means only 20% would be zero, and some of those are going to be part-time, let's be honest.
Well, with those full-time jobs, how many of those jobs are above the minimum wage?
Well, 60% of them are skilled jobs above minimum wage.
Just 60%. A quick answer, Leanne. We are going to have to move on. Matt, I know, I appreciate you want to make your point.
Yeah, you've made your point, and the point about zero-hours contracts is something that is a real issue for many people. They don't know how many hours they're going to be working 1 week to the next. They don't know the level of wages that they're going to be bringing in. And you say that 60% of jobs have been created for skilled workers. Do we know that they are well above the minimum wage? Because I know that minimum wage jobs aren't enough to live on, which is why we support the living wage, which, I believe that if you work a 40-hour week, you should earn enough money to live on. And people, far too many people are earning poverty wages.
All right, let's get a question in the front row.
Hi Leanne, my name's Ellen and I'm from Cardiff. You've spoken briefly about jobs here. I see a lot of my talented friends travelling over the border into England in prospect of higher wages and better job prospects. What is Plaid Cymru going to do to ensure that this doesn't happen?
That's a good question, and if I had an easy answer to that, then I'd give it to you now, but I'm afraid I don't. We have to, in Wales, do what we can to create good opportunities for young people. There's more we can do in terms of supporting young people to create their own businesses, for example. There's more we can do to support young people to train and upskill themselves. The whole debate around tuition fees is a live issue, the difference between Wales, Scotland and England in terms of how much the governments subsidise those tuition fees. Questions around apprenticeships as well. We need more good quality apprenticeships and not allow employers to use apprenticeships as a way of paying young people lower wages than the minimum wage again. You'd need to come out of that with a strong skill. So there's a number of different things like that we could do in terms of supporting more job creation provision for young people. But the question that you've raised is about people leaving Wales, and it's a huge problem, because it means that the people that we have in Wales that we need to help build our economy are not there. And so incentivising young people to remain in Wales, one thing that you could do on this...
Well, it has to be quite quickly, and we are running out of time. I'm sorry to say already. It's flown by.
With tuition fees, if we could incentivise young people to study in Wales and remain in Wales, then there's a good chance of people staying there. So our policy for doctors, for example, is we want to subsidised doctors' tuition fees to remain in Wales as long as they stayed there and worked for 5 years after training.
All
So
right,
there
Leanne,
are incentives like that.
I will have to wrap that up.
Sorry.
I'm really sorry. Just a quick question from Twitter. Chris wanted to know, as you're here in the live lounge, if you were to do a cover version of a song here, if you were here singing, what would you sing for us?
Every day when I wake up, I thank the Lord I'm Welsh.
Right, absolutely. 90s classic. All right, well, that was the first Newsbeat Ask the Listeners. If you want to watch what's been happening in the live lounge, we're on iPlayer. Thank you very much to Leanne Wood, and thank you to our audience here. Some of them part of BBC Generation 2015. Just do a search to find out more.